now we're going to pivot on to Veterans Have the Drive. And in this segment, we're going to talk with Todd Bowers, who's the director of UberMILITARY. And Todd has served in our country for 13 years in the Marine Corps. And he has spent his career and his life work helping military and their families re-enter into civilian life in so many different capacities. And I'm thrilled to hear about what he's going to talk about, but I want to thank you for your service to the country and welcome you to the stage to hear about what you're going to talk about. Thank you.
Well, you guys made me sound a lot more heroic than I really am, because to be honest, I just enlisted because the uniforms were awesome. All right. I saw that recruiter in between the cafeterias in high school, and I said, I bet that guy gets some girls. Well, thank you for having me. And what I thought I'd maybe do is I would start off a little bit by talking about something that we all have in common. I was in the Marine Corps for 13 years. I did 4 tours in that time, was wounded multiple times. Not a very good Marine. I should have learned to duck better. But we have something in common. We all go through life and we deal with something that is essential for defining who we are. We go through transitions. Whether you're going from high school to college, from college to your internship, that internship to your first job, to your next job, going from being single to being married, we all go through these transitions in life, and it makes us better people for it. One of the things that's different, though, is that the sacrifice and service that we talk about when we're talking about people in the military is that when you enlist in the military, when you become an officer, whatever the case may be, you give up the ability to have any control over those transitions. I'll share with you guys, if you want real quickly, a good war story. I got a ton of them. They usually come out after some whiskey late night, but I'll give you one now. When I was a young mid-20-something, I was working on Capitol Hill. I had a great girlfriend, had my cool little Honda Civic, had my 328 square feet of awesome apartment. I was living the life. Things were sweet. I was like, this is great. I was a Marine Corps reservist. Everything was going smoothly. And I got a call on a Tuesday night, January 7th. I still remember it. And it was the commanding officer for the detachment that I was in at the time. And he eloquently said to me, with the passion and the candor and the understanding of the impact of what was about to happen, he said to me, he said, Bowers, pack your shit. Wait, what? Found myself 4 days later on the USS Ashland, a lovely flat-bottom boat, and was on that thing for the next 5 weeks before we got to Kuwait. That was 4 days later. That transition happened like that. It was a little bit overwhelming. And for the next 10 months, I spent my time as a civil affairs specialist, a job that isn't too sexy in the military, but is essential. My entire job was to reduce civilian interference with military operations. That's bullshit, right? All right. I was the militant wing of the Red Cross. That was my job, to help everybody no matter what, to help the civilians that were so impacted by these conflicts. And those are the stories that you tend not to hear about. You hear about the snipers, and you hear about this and that. You don't hear about the guy holding a little kid's hand after they just survived a bombing. But that's what we did in the Marine Corps. It was some of the proudest work that I ever had. Now, after that impactful experience, I found myself back in Washington, D.C. Still had the Honda, but didn't have the girlfriend. Didn't have the job anymore. I had gone from leading Marines through this incredible experience to all of a sudden finding myself trying to figure out what next. I ended up cleaning dumbwaiters until 3 in the morning, waiting for classes to start, for me to apply. I watched that $6,000 that I'd saved over those 10 months just dwindle, paying rent until I could make that next step. I didn't have that thing to fill the mortar in between the bricks of life. Now, cut to a few months later, if you could believe it, I got activated again. This time, I kind of saw it coming. Things were going downhill in Iraq. So I went back, this time as a big, tough sergeant. And it was on that tour that my life switched, where I started to think about the impact that I could have on people when they come home. And it all came down to October 17th, 2004, at 11:34 a.m. We were on a patrol outside of Fallujah. It's a lovely city, beautiful in November if you can get there. Don't do it. But spent some time there in Fallujah, and we got into a pretty heavy firefight. Now, you got to remember, we're reservists. Again, I'm a pretty casual, normal guy. But all of a sudden, I found myself fighting for my life and fighting for the lives of the Iraqis that were caught in the crossfire. At a single moment, I ended up leaning up against a Humvee to take cover in between the streets. And I'll tell you guys, Hollywood, as hard as they try, they don't get it right, all right? It's a very different environment when bullets are coming down range at you. There's no big boom that comes your way. There's this little, and that's the sound of the lead breaking the sound barrier as it's whizzing by your head. Something you'll never forget. So I took a knee, realized there were some guys shooting at me, and I engaged the enemy. We went back and forth with a volley, and unbeknownst to me, every time I was putting them in the reticle of my rifle, there was someone to my left putting my head in the reticle of their rifle. All of a sudden, I felt a bang. My glasses blew off my head. My helmet was tilted back. I saw sky, dirt, blood. I pulled myself back up, and I looked around. I couldn't see out of my left eye. Didn't know what was going on in that instant of a moment. But what I could see through my right eye was two of my buddies. I'm going to pull from the talking points a little bit, too, just given some issues that our country's facing right now. I'm going to try and keep together here. Those guys that came to help me that day, it was an African-American guy. It was a Korean guy. It was two Latino individuals. In the Marine Corps, we are not taught that anyone has a color, that there is no race, there is no creed. We're all green. And those guys that helped me that day, and again, I hope people understand where I'm going with this. The past week's been pretty tough for folks, all right? And just know this, the United States Marine Corps, we're taught there are no colors out there. We treat everyone equally. I would give my life for everybody in this room, regardless of your race, creed, religion, or anything. All right. Here to talk about Uber, right? Sorry. All right. So basically, make a long story short, a sniper had shot me in the left side of my face. If you look through the scope that I was using, the bullet went right into the side there, and it blew up in my face. Took my left eye. I can't hear out of my left ear. I used to look like Fabio before the accident. Now I look like, literally, I look like Zach Galifianakis and Ed Harris's love child. So it was an intense moment. It was one, I would get wounded a few more times, but that was the close call. That was that I shouldn't be here anymore moment. And what I said in that time frame was I said, I need to do something about the difficulty that folks have when they're transitioning. Again, we all go through transitions, but remember the military, we didn't get to ask what those were like. And I enlisted in the military, but my family got drafted. It's hard on military families as well. So when I got back, I got into the advocacy world and started working with the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. And I focused on getting veterans back into school, getting them training for jobs, things along those lines. But there was still this gap that was missing. It was that time between you could start classes, before you could make that next step in life. I went to work at JP Chase. I started helping them with their philanthropic endeavors, supporting veterans and military families. But again, I couldn't find that mortar that was helping people, that could help them make that next step in their life. And that's when I jumped into working with Uber. I saw this thing and I said, you know what, this is rather unique because this is something that folks can step up and they could say, you know what, I just need something for this little bit to fill that gap. I could have used it in 2003, in 2005, in 2008, and 2010 when I came back from my fourth and final deployment. And what we started to realize was we said, this is a unique opportunity for folks. We can probably fill these ranks, but we got to make sure it's ingrained in the company, that this is part of something that we want to focus on. So we made a challenge. We said, let's try and do 50,000 veterans, military family members on the platform within 18 months. It's 20 months later, and we're at 70,000 right now. It's having a huge impact for these folks, right? And quite honestly, we as a company need to make sure that we're supporting them on this front as well. So last Veterans Day, I was pretty proud of this one. A big team worked on this. But next time you guys jump into an Uber, if you have a veteran partner driver that's opted in, you're going to get a little card while you're on the ride that says, hey, your driver is a veteran or military spouse. Be sure to thank them for their service. These little adjustments that we can make in our business models can have a huge impact for these individuals. I know that if something like this existed back when I was trying to come back and work in these pretty tough jobs and tough hours, things would have gone a little bit better. It would have been a lot easier for me to make those transitions. And that was the goal that we wanted to have. We knew that we could fill those gaps for people. We knew that we could help them, and we're onto something. And we're going to continue to pursue this. And I don't know what my next steps are going to be throughout this amazing life that I've been fortunate to have. But I do know that I'm going to continually think about those gaps. And I challenge all of you to think about that too. We focus, and even this morning we've talked about a lot of people making transitions. people coming from prison and going back into civilian life. Any company can have an impact on this space. Prop 47 here in California has been something that we've looked at. We looked at the drivers who had signed up onto the Uber platform who were denied because of the way they had been charged. We wrote back to them after Prop 47 came in. We said, here's what you have to go through to change this. And then within a few weeks, we had 3,000 people who had been qualified to be able to drive on Uber. That's a small drop in the bucket, but these are the types of business things that we can do to have a huge impact on folks. And again, it comes down to helping them with that transition. If you're working, if you're feeling valued, if you're feeling like you're part of your community, you can have a huge impact. So I don't know what the next steps are going to be, but I'm looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.